another writing tip. Today's writing tip is going to be about creating your own language. Now, in the world of fantasy and science fiction, oftentimes you'll have some alien race, and cultures, of course, and not all of them know to speak English, or for that matter, any other earthly language that we know of. And that, of course, raises a question of should the author create a language of his own for somebody's careers to use or not? The answer depends on how much it will add to your world versus the amount of effort involved. For example, if in the course of an entire 300-page book the alien's going to speak like 2 lines, then you can either have someone say something like, and then he said something in his alien tongue that he didn't catch, or just make up a couple words on the spot like Klaatu Vrata Nikto. But if the alien language is a major component of the story, and use pieces of it from time to time as we'll say insults, side comments, occasional greeting, things like that, then something a bit more extensive is required. How extensive? Well, if you're going to invent your own language, do it right, or at least enough to make it look real in the story. And for anything of this sort, always make a bit more than you'll need in the actual story, because you'd rather run with some extra stuff than not have enough when you're in the middle there. You can start with some basic grammatical rules. Is it a phonetic language? Does the adjective come before or after the noun? Must every second sentence end in a whistle? That sort of thing. You don't have to be a literary professor about it. Just enough detail for it to work in the sentences that you plan on constructing. Next is any stylizations that have to be incorporated. One race, for instance, might use sounds that sound more like growls. Another, for instance, a bird race might have a lot of whistles. One language might have a preponderance of vowels, while another may be just about completely devoid of them. Or some language, for instance, might see the need of adding 3 letters at the end of the word, all of which are silent. For instance, French. And whatever you decide, just keep it consistent. You're trying to create a distinctive sound for your language, in much the same way that as someone in our world can recognize, hey, he's speaking Spanish without actually knowing Spanish, your language should have that sort of quality. So even if someone doesn't know the language or the words, they can at least say, hey, that sounds like this alien language. And then the fun part is next, creating the dictionary. At first, this amounts to basically putting a bunch of random words on paper. Just make sure to stay within the guidelines that you've set up for yourself for this language. After a while, you might find a pattern forming of certain sounds, or building larger words with smaller ones you've already made. For instance, in the Molinese language, Daln is the word for land. And while te means tall. So put them together, te daln means tall land or mountain. So you have different ways of that sort of once you have enough base words, of using them to construct other words, which is pretty much how a lot of languages in this world got their start anyway. And you might decide, is this a purely phonetic language? Is for instance, in English, for example, one word can have different meanings. Your language may not work that way. It may be one word, this is a different meaning. In Molinese, for instance, there are 4 different words for thank you, 3 different words for strength, and about, I think, 3 or 4 different words for death. A different meaning is a different word. It depends how you want to design your language. whichever way you decide upon, just keep it consistent. You can begin with certain elements from some earthly languages and just tweak them from there. Or you can just use your own imagination and let it fly. Um, Above all, though, the word has to be something that people can speak, or at least some sort of living creature with, you know, lips or beaks or something can vocalize. Say it out loud if you're in doubt, or if it's a language that a non-human with alien vocal cords would say, then try to imagine what the sound would sound like if you heard it before putting it into letters. I've read a few stories throughout the years where they had some alien words, and you can tell that they just took like any 5 random letters in the alphabet and just slapped them down there and said, well, it's an alien word, without seeing if this is one that said aliens could actually pronounce. You know, so you say it out loud, you know, if it helps. Once you have enough alien words in a dictionary, the next question is, how often should you use them? With one notable exception, I kept it to such things in my own books, for instance, as cuss words as an example, which means I can have the characters cuss all I want, and it ain't going to get edited by anyone because it's what amounts to an alien nonsense word. Cuss words or local phrases like the equivalent of I love you or go jump with a lake. References that have no direct English equivalent are also other things that I use. Or for instance, time periods. You know, the time periods in your world, 1 year may be something else. Like in Maldine, it's actually a rel, and it equates to 3.6 Earth years. So instead of saying a Maldine year, I just say a rel because that's the way everybody there is going to speak. You know, they're going to speak in what's natural to them. But just have occasional use of these alien words, you know, sprinkled throughout there to lend an accent to your story. You know, you don't want large swaths of this sort of stuff in your book, so the reader has to look up like every other paragraph, you know, in an appendix to this. I do have an appendix of the Maldine dictionary in the back of my books, but the way I put in the alien words, a lot of them you can gain out of context, and so then pretty soon the reader will have at least a passing familiarity and know what's being said. An example is a phrase, wait a tid. And you may go, what's a tid? What does it sound like? It sounds sort of like wait a sec, which is exactly what it is. A tid is a unit of Maldine time. It's equal to about half a second. So try to blend it in better. So you have those alien words and alien accent, but they can get up a lot of them through context without having to consult that dictionary that you have in the back of the book. Now, I did mention an exception for the large swaths of stuff. There's a certain scene in Maldine 2, that same book over my shoulder, in which an alien literally drops in from out of the sky from another world in Maldine, and I do it entirely from her point of view. You know, so that the reader can be just as confused as she is. And what I did is, as they're having an exchange, she's talking and we can understand like English, and the other characters I'm having talking in Maldineese. Is I did up that entire dialogue section normally first in English, and then translated all the stuff that the Maldineese characters were saying. And in the course of that, had to add a few extra words and everything to my Maldineese dictionary. And this goes on for a few paragraphs until one of the wizards casts a spell so that she can understand. But for those, those few paragraphs, it's from the alien's point of view, hearing Maldinis in full. And yes, you can go to the back of the dictionary or the appendix in the back and look up in the dictionary to see what exactly it is that they're saying. But it's also kind of fun, this is what an alien landing on the planet would hear when they're talking in all native speak. And you can do that too for certain situations of your own. When it's the first time, say, somebody comes in from another world and joins in, and for like the first page or something, no one can understand what he's saying until somebody gets a translator or something going. And so you just write everything he says as normally, and then use your little dictionary and translate it over, to what the alien language is. And if you have some curious reader, they can actually look up in the appendix in the back to see what he's been trying to say if they're curious. If not, you have an alien just speaking an alien language, and that's kind of fun. Anyway, basically, follow your own rules, keep them consistent. Internal consistency is the best piece of advice, not only on making your own language, but on anything you do about inventing anything about your world. Just as long as you keep everything consistent within itself, people will buy it and then will enjoy the story instead of being jolted out of it by constantly going, what the heck is it saying? Anyway, that's today's writing tips, and keep reading.